Kumlen Abba Kamara, Freilich Chaneke. Today's daf is Chaf Amud Aleph. We stopped at Vitesse of Beis, about 10 lines on the bottom of the page. Tana Bami learned. This is a story. Pamach was once Olu Ko Yisrael Yerushalayim. All the Eden went up Yom Tov to Yerushalayim. Below Hoyelehem Mayim Lishtes. They didn't have water to drink. This is in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Holach Nagdima Ben Gorion Eitzel Adanech. Nagdima Ben Gorion went to one of the distinguished people, eminent people there. Amalei Halveni Shteim Esse Mayonis Mayim. Do me a favor, lend me 12 springs of water, and La'oil the Golem, so in order that the people who are traveling are making this great trek to the Shalim have what to drink. I will pay you back. I'll bring back to you filled with water. And this had to be rainwater because there were no underground water for all these wells. And as a guarantee of security, if I don't give it to you, I'll give you 12 chunks of silver. The cover is man, they fixed the date. Gimish Gears man, the date arrived. It didn't rain the entire time. It didn't rain. B'shachris in the morning, Shalalai, the officers, this distinguished person sent him, Shagali, send me. So you gotta keep your word. Either send me, give me the water in my wells, or pay me. She has to be other. You promised me. So he said the back a dying yeshli's man. I still have plenty of time. Shachris over here, the shagis I want to say means mincha gedola, or as soon as it came afternoon. Then, because he said to Kolayim Kulushliu, it's my day. I still, have a chance to pay you. So Raim later on the afternoon, Sholach shagali oy my. Again, the same ultimatum. She has to be able to yomi. Sholach la'dayin yeshus v'yem. Still have time. The mincha, which is even later, Sholach shagali oy my. You got to send me again. Shalach la'dayin yeshus v'yem. Leave me alone. I still have time. Live all of Isa Adon. So that Adon then mocked him, and he said to him, the entire year it didn't rain. There was this terrible drought, and you think in the last few minutes of today, and the skies are clear, but you think now it's going to rain? He went into the Beis Hamerchetz in joy. While this Adon went to the bathhouse already counting his dollars, Nachdimon entered the Beis Hamikdash kishu that he was very distressed, and to daven. Now, obviously, in the Beis Hamikdash doesn't mean literally the building. It must be in the as a noshim. This Atta, he wrapped himself up in the towels, but Amar b'tefillah, and he stood and he davened. Amar from the Benishler. Go live the Yadul Fanecha, Shalal Chvoidias. He said, didn't do it for my honor. He said, didn't do it for the honor of my ancestors. For your honor. If people are going Oila Regel, they should have what to drink. Asisi, I did it. The water should be plenty available for the Oila Regalim. We're Rav Chaf Amud Aleph, about 8 lines on the top of the page. And Nagdim Ben Gurion guaranteed the person, after he borrowed those 12 wells, that I'll either fill you up with rain again, or I'll reimburse you with a large, extravagant sum of silver. And it didn't rain. And in the last few minutes of the day, like was davening, miyad, suddenly the kasher shmayim ba'oven became very cloudy. The yerduk shamim, and it rained. Achen ismalu shteim esei mayonis mayim. All the entire 12 wells all filled up. Like seals left over, by the time the Adon left the Beis Hamerchetz, it was overcast, it was cloudy, and the wells filled with water. And of course, he was very upset because he was counting the money. Nagdim Ben Gurion Yotze Beis Hamikdash, and Nagdim Ben Gurion, while the Adon went out of Beis Hamerchetz, Nagdim went out of Beis Hamikdash, and Kishapog, they met each other. Amaloi Tenli Dmei Mayim Yosesh Yesh to be other. Nagdim said to him, I gave you an excess amount of water. In fact, you owe me. I know. So he does with Baruch Salami El Bishul. I know that Abisha turned the world upside down, topsy-turvy for your sake. But it doesn't help. You know why? I still have a one-upness over you. That I can still legally extricate my money from you. It's already, the sun already has set. It's already the following day. Too late. The rain that happened is my good fortune. He went back to Beis Hamikdash. He wrapped us up in daven for the Benishler. Teach the world that you still have good friends in this world. In other words, the cloud scattered, the Zorcha Chama, and the sun sort of came back, and it was still dead. If the sun would not have returned, or would not have pierced through the clouds, I would have had one upmanship over you. So that I can extract my money from you. Tana, we learned, his real name was not Nagdim Ben Gurion, Ella, Boini Ishma, his real name was Boini. Why is it Nagdim? Because the sun shone for him, or the sun pierced through the clouds. There were 3 different people that the sun appeared for them. Moshe, Yeshua, Nagdim Ben Gurion. Look at the caliber of the people that were comparing Nagdim to. We just had the story. Yeshua Yeshua also says clearly in the pasuk, Vayidem Hashemish, and the sun stopped, and the moon stopped, and then he was fighting the war there. And the moon stayed, the sun stayed still, and didn't move at all. So the sun stopped in the chus of Shua. Where do we find that about Moshe Rabbeinu? The machlekes whether we're talking about the Mechama of Sichel and Mechama of Vaygu. Where do you find by either one of them that the sun stayed? Amar Rav Elazar, Asul or not, Achel Achel. Here it says Achel Teis Pachlecha. It says over here that the Eibusha told Moshe Rabbeinu that today Achel Teis Pachlecha, that you are going to start to instill your fear. So we use the word Achel. Uksiv Hasam, and by Yeshua it says Achel Gadelcha. Hashem says Yeshua, today people are going to realize how great you are, that I'm going to be with you just like I supported Moshe. Achel Gadelcha, that you'll start your greatness. So we see the same word Achel Shava. So therefore, just like the greatness of Yeshua was symbolized by the fact that the sun stayed in its path, in its orbit, same thing by Moshe Rabbeinu. From Asya, we learn out from the same pasuk. Moshe mentions Achel. It says the next word taste. It's from the word taste. Taste. Achel taste. I will begin to instill your fear. Or Ksiv Hasan by Yeshua. It says in a different pasuk that Yeshua spoke to Hashem. It says, "B'yoyim taste Hashem Mitzrayim," the day that Hashem gave over a moed for the Eden. So it says taste. You don't have to make any Gzei Shabbat, just the reading of the pasuk itself. It says in the pasuk, Hashem says to you, it says in the pasuk, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, today people are going to instill fear in people and all the nations of the world. And says in the pasuk, Asher Yishmu, they will hear Shimacha, they'll hear all about you, and they will tremble and they will fear you. The entire world are going to fear Moshe Rabbeinu. The entire world, I mean, those who met him is one thing, but the entire world, what event is such a cataclysmic event that the entire world can witness it at the same time? When the sun stood still, that's when the entire world was involved. The Shainim already asked, or why doesn't it mention in the Taste and Chulun and other Shainim, why doesn't it mention Yaakov? By Yaakov it says that the sun, in Parshat Vayetze, that the sun stopped. Parshat Vayishlach, when Vayishlach Shemesh, that the sun came back. So Tais's answers, it was actually not such a big nest because it was a payback. The sun set early when he in Parshat Vayetze, when he was traveling. The sun sets early, so he should go to sleep there. And the Eibusha therefore owed to the world a little bit of time extra for the sun to make up the time that it set early. So therefore that doesn't count. These were miracles out of the ordinary. Says more further, it says in our Mishnah, if you have a city that it didn't rain in part of the city, and the other city did rain, they both were klala. The part that didn't rain is a drought, the part that did rain, talking about excessive rain. They are both a curse. So now the Gemara says we have a number of psukim that appears to be a curse, but actually is always a silver lining in it. For example, when we compare Yerushalayim, Yirmi compares Yerushalayim, Hoysa Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is treated like a nida. You think it's a terrible thing, right? She was ostracized. No, the barach, because just like a nida, wouldn't be like a nida. Man nida yesh lehet. A nida goes to the mikveh. She's tired. After Yerushalayim yesh lehet to gone. Even though Yerushalayim we destroyed and razed to the ground, there's hope. Then it says, in Eicha Hoysa Kalmona, the Yerushalayim became like an almona. Again, Lebrach, what's the silver lining? Ki almana, like an almana, but v'loi almana, but not exactly an almana. Mamish, elaki isha, like a woman. Shahalach bayil mesiyam, a woman is like an aguna, but there's always a hope the husband can come back. The daiter lachzelen, in some occasion, the intention is to come back. So while he's away, she's an almana, and she's nervous. Will he be able to come back or not? Will he be safe? And then he comes back, so it's like an amon. Interesting. Here we say that a chaf is not the same thing. In Ksubis, the Gemara says you have to be careful what you say, because you said we were like this Daim and Amora, and then the Navi reprimanded them. He says you are Daim and Amora, instead of saying like. He says like, because a chaf doesn't change the meaning that it's exactly that. So sometimes a chaf means like but not exactly, similar but not exactly. And sometimes we say it's identical. Here we're saying it's just similar but not exactly. The Gamani Sati Eschem, it says that further bringing to other psukim where even though it sounds like overtly sounds like a curse, but in fact there's a silver lining there. It says in Malachi, the Gamanina Sati Eschem Nivzim Mushfolim, I put you, the Jewish nation, Nivzim, that you should be, humiliated, Vishfolim, and downtrodden. The Loi Mukmina, what's the bracha? One of the main reasons for anti-Semitism is that throughout the ages, because the Jewish people were denied ownership of land and certain businesses, so what did they end up doing? They became tax collectors, lenders for interest, all of these jobs that are nasty and that people despise. So the bracha was, because we are so downtrodden, they decide not to give us the position of relation, not the tax collectors who standing by the bridges, by the rivers, in order to make us the police. And this way, people don't have times against us. Then it says further, another passage, it says, the Eibishter will smite the Eden. And how? He said, just like the kana, the reed waves in the water. Not like a cedar, but like a reed that is very flexible. It's actually a bracha. But how's a bracha? It says the pasuk, the wounds of a friend, even though it hurts you, you know that they mean your best. But v'ne'atar is the shikasayna. V'ne'atar is that they deceive, and the shikasayna, the kisses of an enemy are actually very deceptive, because you think they like you, they don't like you at all. And more or less that's how all the pshatim learn. But the Taisus in his last shot says an interesting thing. Taisus says, maybe the other way around, when good friends suddenly fight, that animosity becomes so solid that there's no way you can overturn that. The money means they remain that way faithfully forevermore, but they become true enemies. However, but Nataras Nashika Saina, if a Saina decides Nashikas to make shalom with you, even though you hated each other for a long time and now you decide to make peace, then it's possible that this thing this peace should remain forever. So exactly the opposite of what we just said. But anyway, so what do we try to say with these psukim here? So the Gemara, he says, what's the idea of a kana? Our friend Achia Shaleni, when he although he heard us, he was telling Yerovam all of these terrible things because Yerovam did split the kingdom. So Achia Shaleni cursed us, and yet his curse was a greater bracha than the brachas that Bilam gave us. The bracha Bilam Rasha gave us, as with Marsh and Hedron, all the brachas Bilam Rasha gave us were transformed later into klolos. Rashi here says an interesting thing, and Rashi says over here that even though the brachas of Bilam, he only said the first part that he actually intended for something bad, and the Eibishter or a malach added the words that afterward. For example, Rashi says, it says what do you call ka'arozim, like cedar tree. He just wanted to be like a cedar tree. We get rooted. The malach added the words ale mayim, next to the water. And Bilam said kinacholim, like rivers, that rivers can dry up. And Eden Chas V'Shalom will be the mice of the Eden, and the Malach added Notoyu, it'll constantly flowing, that they never dry up. And so this is how it worked. Bilam didn't say the entire Parshas Bolok that we had. Bilam said the beginning of the Psukim, and his intention was to conclude with something terrible, and came along a Malach and changed it around and added the extra words after each beginning of each pasuk to turn it into a bracha. So Achia Shaleni, what's the shot? Achia Shaleni kill because he cursed him out with the reed, the reed compared to a reed, it's actually a bracha. He should smite you, Kashi Yon and Akana. So it's a klal, right? And the Eibush should smite us, but he compared us to a reed that moves with the wind. I understand where the water is, but it always regenerates itself. Reuben has many roots, so it's solid. But and all the winds in the world could come and blow. You kind of uproot it because it's so well entrenched. And the wind, it can flutter in the wind, but it still stands strong. To the wind stop, it goes right back to its original position. So after all the challenges of the world, when it gets calm, we're right back where we started. He says, he best us see the tree. So I just told you, he didn't say, he just said karazim, and he actually meant a curse. If the malach continued alimoim, cedar trees generally do not grow near water. The malach said that, not Bilam. The ein gizemachlev, it doesn't generally regenerate itself. The ein shirashim rubin doesn't have many roots, it has one strong root. And yet, once you topple, if you're very strong wind comes, a gust of wind, you can topple the whole tree, it only has one root. I feel on the one hand, it's pretty strong in the ground. Winds generally cannot overturn it. Or but the rain is but the southerly winds, which are the strongest, completely uproots it and turns it over on its head. Later than that, that the reed had a bracha that from the reed we make the quills to write Sfarim, Sifrei Torah, and mezuzahs and tefillin and so on. So therefore, Achir Shlomo's Klola was actually, there's a very strong civil line. Says about it further. Maisa, there's a story. Shabbat Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Shimon Migdal G'dorim, the Beis Rabbi Lozer, the son of Rabbi Shimon Yochai, came from Migdal G'dorim, from the house of his Rebbe. He was riding on a donkey, and he was taking a spatzir on the boardwalk right next to the river. He said, and he felt so good about himself. This time around, he learned a lot of Torah. He met a person extremely ugly. And this person addressed Rabbi Lozer and he said, Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. Rabbi Lozer didn't answer. So he says to Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Lozer said to him, Reika, you push the keli, the empty vessel. How ugly is that person? Most of the entire city is ugly as you. He said to him, I don't know. Go talk to the craftsman, to my creator, and complain to him why he created such an ugly looking vessel. How ugly is this vessel? As soon as Rabbi Lozer realized what he said and how disparaging he was, he descended, he alighted from the donkey, and he prostrated himself before this man. I concede to you, do me a favor. I spoke out of turn. Be moichel me. I will not be moichel you. How ugly is this king? Rabbi Lozer walked after him, didn't go back on his donkey. He walked behind him all the way, pleading with him to forgive him. Everybody came out to visit to see Rabbi Lozer. Rebbe, Moidi. So this person said to all of them, who are you referring to as Rebbe? The person behind you know who he is? This is Rabbi Shimon Yochai's son, Rabbi Lozer. He's a rabbi. The Eibush should help us. There shouldn't be no more such rabbis amongst the Jewish people. They asked him, what are you talking about? Why? This is what he said to me. They said to him, despite the fact that he said that to you, you should be Meichel. He's a great man, a knowledgeable person. I'm not doing it for his sake, I'm doing it for you. You should never do this again. A person should be tender like a reed. No, you shouldn't be so harsh. That should be so harsh like a cedar, which he was. And that is why the kana was zeicher, because he's bendable and flexible. That's why the kana was zeicher, that from it we should make quills so that we can write Sifrei Torah and tefillin and mezuzahs. Now, this is a very difficult Gemara. Interesting. First of all, before we said that you were zeicher with a quill to write Torah and Nevi'im and Ksuvim, Here he says we're right. Zeiche to write Mitzulim Mezuzahs. Before we use it to say this is a proof that that a kohen is a choshev thing, because from that we use what do you call it? Sorry, that you should use Torah Mitzvah. Over here, he went further. He said not only Torah Mitzvah, but even Tefillin Mezuzah as well, which is a separate thing altogether. We also made it that dafka quill should be the kosher tool to use. Very difficult Gemara. All the Mepharshim trying to understand what in the world happened there. And there's a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe on this, and I couldn't remember where it was. But basically, the Rebbe learned that the whole thing was ruchnius. In order, this person was a Russian. In order to break the Rebbe Elazar's approach was, you have to break the person and make the person shudder and realize how far he went, and maybe that will cause him to do tshuva. And the conversation was that you don't have to break somebody to go to the tshuva. You can do it in a positive way as well. And that was the conversation between this Adam Mechur. Mechur means that he was ugly because of Averis that he did. And he was saying that, and Rebbe Elazar was trying to break him, and he went further. He said, so that means that your whole neighborhood, that you were a bad influence, and not only you're a Russia, but everybody in your neighborhood is a Mechur as well. And basically the guy was saying to him that that's not the way. If you want to make me do tshuva, you have to do it, stress the positive and not emphasize the negative. I can't remember all the details. It's a beautiful sikha. If I can find it, if I remember it, I'll tell you where it is. Says about it further. That has in there a plague, which we said before, like an earthquake, and the walls crumble and fall down. You have to fast. But you have to fast and be masriya. Torah we learned. When we say that the walls collapsed, we're talking about brias. There were healthy walls. There was no reason for it to collapse. When it collapsed, then we go ahead and do this whole thing. But if the walls themselves already were very weak and they were inevitable, they were going to fall down. When they fall down, there's nothing to fast for. That's why it is. So he says, and if they're not suitable to fall, the loy haru is lipo. Has to be walls that are not ready. They're not potentially there to fall down. But if it's potential to fall down, we don't have to fast. So the Gemara says you're repeating yourself. You said brias. Obviously, brias means einon ruas lipa. And you said veloy ruas, and ruas means that it is ruas lipa. Haini brias, haini shein ruas lipa. Is that the same thing? Why you're repeating yourself? Haini ruas, haini ruas lipa. We're talking about the naflu. You could have a case where the walls are strong, and yet ruas lipa. How is that? The naflu machas gufaya. We can learn in the beginning of Abasa, the base of the Mishnah, and the Gimel, that a wall, there's a proportion how thick the wall is to how high the wall can be. So here you have wall made out of stone, proper walls, but you made it too high. And then as far as the rules of engineering go, this wall cannot last for a very long time. So it's a strong wall, a sturdy wall, but has a potential to fall down. Or inami, or the kaiman aguda denora. The walls are strong, but it's near the riverbanks. I mean, like what happened in Miami there, in that building, because they say that the water is from the ocean, with very close by. So if again waters are sturdy, but yet ruas lipa. I'll give an example now of a case where you have I'll give an example now of another case where the walls are not sturdy, but not ruas lipa. And there also you don't fast. How can you have walls that are not sturdy and not ruas lipa? Here, she says a wall ruya that was not sturdy. The have been a doid. The loy have choliv Rabbi Shmuel. To Rabbi Shmuel refused to go underneath it. Avagav the kaim of asat place of shnim. 13 years it was standing this way. So in other words, what we see from here, it was very weak walls. It was constantly threatening to collapse, and yet 13 years didn't, which means it was not ruas lipa. But the Rabbi Shmuel were a bit hesitant to walk underneath the wall. One day, Rabbi came there. Shmuel Rav. They say, "Man, if Shmuel Rav, no, let's walk around the wall like we always do for our spazier." So you see from here, the Rabbi Shmuel used to be, we were close for a while together. He said to him, "You don't have to." Not is now midst the Nafish Chutza. He was a holy man, and he had so many merits. So therefore, I'm no longer scared. In his chutz, the walls are going to be upstanding. Taser already said this is not the same Rabbi Ada bar Abba that we always have, who was a Talmud of Rabba, and Rabba was born the day that Rabbi Yehuda passed away, and Rabbi Yehuda was a student of Rabbi Shmuel. It's impossible that Rabbi Ada bar Abba was equal to Rabbi Shmuel. Gemara tells a similar story. So he had his wine in his house. The house was threatening to collapse. He wanted to remove all the wine from but he was scared. So he was very clever. What he did was he invited Rabbi Barabba over to this house. And he started to delve into a very heavy, complex sugi. And while they were arguing everything else, they were inside that house. His servants, whatever it is, came and took all the wine out. And in the schutz of Barabba, the house didn't collapse. Ad the panya until they cleared out all the wine. Boss of the nafik, and after they walked out, nafil basis, the house collapsed straight away. Argish Rabbi Barabba realized what just happened. It was a ploy. The whole thing was a ploy to get him to be in the house, and his chus, the house stood. Ikbet, he was very upset. You're taking advantage of me. Now, what's wrong? Why was he upset? You're not allowed to stand in a makom sakana. He said, but Hashem, the Shemaim will do a nest. Because first of all, how do you know there'll be a nest? And even they will, this takes away some of your credits that you had from going to Gan Eden. And therefore, he was upset that they used him out. Even though he wasn't totally unaware of it. We already have in Marav Tzochin of Ches, we had where, that even though with the Shlucha Mitzvah in the Zokin, but Mokum Shvicha Zeka, even though you have a mitzvah that protects you, you're not allowed to rely on it because you still have to work through Al Piteva. Amar, he said, Amar Rav Chanan said, my Korah, what's the passage? You see, it says, Katointi Mikola Chsadim Mikola. Last week's parsha, 2 weeks ago's parsha, it says Yaakov said, Katointi, why do I feel reduced? Why am I so small? Because all the chesed that Abish gave me, maybe I lost my schusim. My Habuv did Rabbi Barabba. What's so special about Rabbi Barabba? We learned Shalom to me Rabbi Barabba. Somebody wants to ask about Rabbi Barabba, but man, actually, what schus do you have that you listen to a long life? He said, beyond my late basically, I was never angry in my house. And even though we learned that, you sometimes throw dishes to instill fear, but they didn't do it because he was angry. He just did it deliberately. The late Sa'ad team, his name is I never stepped out in front of somebody who's greater than me. Well, he had a hard team with enough is I did not think irritated in the streets where you have all these feces and everything else. Now, he held up the halacha thinking is all right. Especially, he never walked for without Torah. So we learned the concept that you're an oinus, you have no choice. That if you're learning Torah, then you're allowed to. And yet he was machman, he tried to make sure he didn't. He never walked for hours without film. Shanti never slept in the base of medrash. Technically, you're allowed to sleep a nap in the base of medrash, but he was machman. I never rejoiced when one of my friends, hurt himself. I never called my friend Bach Hachinose by a nickname, which was a disparaging nickname, never. But I'm going to say Bachani Chose. Bachani Chose, interesting, is a last name. And there's a whole argument discussion. When did the last names begin? The Gemara right here says Bachani Chose is a last name. And Teza gives an example. A last name is like the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra says is Avram Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra is a last name, and what does a last name mean? Says Tosfos that the children, the grandchildren, they all share the same name. In other words, it's a last name, but that's not a derogatory name. Over here, talking about a last name or a name you name the entire family, and it's a name that is a disparaging name. Dafkef is like a night. Tell me some of the nice things Huna did. Knows that Huna himself was also a great man, and he could, in his own schus, he could have taken the wine out of the house, but he didn't want to rely on his own chusim, or he was very humble. Amalei, he said, I don't remember what he did. Now, who is Rafan Bar Papa? It's hard to say that he is Rav Papa's son. Rav Papa was a student of Rava, and what do you call it? And Huna was much older than Rava. And Rava is asking Rafan Bar Papa, tell me something about Rav Huna. So Rav Huna said, Rav Papa says, I don't remember. What do you mean I don't remember? If this is Rafan Bar Papa, he wasn't around when Rav Huna was young. So it must be a different Papa. So Loida Kirna, I don't remember his youth, but Besevul said that Kirna, I do remember what he did when he was an older person. First of all, he was very, very wealthy, but he's extremely generous. The Chol Yoima, every day, the Eva, every day that it was cloudy, what he did was and when winds were coming, they would place him on a golden chariot to display his wealth, so people would automatically respect him, including the goyim. He went and he supervised the entire, or he went and studied the entire city. And the Chol Ashisa, any wall, the Havid Isa that was weak, and he felt that as big winds are coming, that maybe it'll topple over, Havi Susale. He would demolish that wall, so it should no longer be a threat. Now, if the owner afterwards could afford it, they would rebuild the wall properly. But the owner couldn't afford to rebuild the wall, then Banal Ima did that. He would spend his own money and rebuild the wall, but he did it to save the people. Champanya, the Maal every Friday afternoon, having Meshad the Shluch l'Shukah, he would send out one of the Shluchim, one of the servants, to the marketplace. All these farmers would come in and bring and sell their vegetables. And any gardener who brought in his vegetables to sell on Friday afternoon, and there were no takers, he would buy it. Now he didn't need so many vegetables, and what would he then do? He would toss it into the river. And why he did that was, Moses say he did it because if the gardeners see they have leftovers and they can't sell it the next day because of Shabbos and Sunday, by then they will wither away or it will rot. So they will bring less fruits, and that would be bad for everybody. So he went and bought it, but then he tossed it in the river. So the Gemara asks the question: if you're such a nice guy, why don't you just give it to the poor people for Shabbos? Why don't you just give it to the poor people? So he says, Zimni, because sometimes the poor people will rely that every Friday they'll get all these vegetables for free. What happens? They won't buy any. What happens? There's nothing left over. They'll have nothing for Shabbos. So the Shadi Lebehema, okay, at least give it to the animals. Batashka through the river. Kisover, he's of the opinion, Michael Adam. It's not nice to give human food to an animal. The special animal food. Don't give human food to an animal. Don't give it all to an animal. Why? And Rashi said, because that's bizui oichlin. It looks like we don't appreciate the goodness Hashem gave to us. Or because the Eibusher has achmanas on the money of a Yid, and it's expensive. Now, the obvious question is, so he throws in the river, what? Is that better? That's not bizui oichel. That isn't throwing away money. So Rashi actually says that when he threw in the river, it didn't get ruined. It traveled, I guess he put it in a basket or something. It traveled down the river, and people further downstream would take the fruit and use it. And so why buy it all? He was worried that next week they'll bring less fruits and then people won't have enough food for Shabbos. When it came to matters of medicine, he would fill up a whole jug of normally a jug of water, and fill up with this medicine. But totally he would hang it up on his doorpost. Anybody needs medicine, come to my house. There's plenty of medicine there. There's something there that the shadim would have. We're not sure exactly what shifta is. The shadim, you have to wash your hands before you take it over. The shadim have some kind of control. The demons have some kind of control over you. So he had a jug of water right next to it. They would hang it up. Called it tzarich. If anybody needs it, first go and wash your hands. You shouldn't endanger your lives. Whenever he was about to sit down and have a meal, he would open his heart. He said, Whoever wants, come. Call it This is what we say in the Heilach Anya. He would say it every time he had sat down for a proper meal. He would open the doors and invite everybody in. So he's very wealthy, but he's extremely magnanimous. Omar Rabba, Kulu Matina Mekaima. All of these noble attributes of Rav Huna I can replicate. Levar Meha, except this very last one, that he just every time he sat down for a meal, he opened the doors and invited the whole community. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Why? Where I am, there are the army was stationed over there, and there were a lot of them very, very poor, and they would come in and they would eat everything that I had. No matter how wealthy I was, I couldn't support the entire army. And therefore, there's like a garrison there. And therefore, I couldn't replicate that. But that's why Rav Huna was so special. But he didn't rely on his own specialty to be able to walk into his house. He relied on Adabara. We'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah, the Gemara further.